Hey everybody, how's it going? So I'm going to start a new series I'm calling QRP Head to Head, and over the next several weeks I'm going to go through all of my different field radios, and we're going to take a look at strengths and weaknesses, look at some of the things I like about the radios, some of the things I don't like about the radios, and we're going to try to pick a winner. This is going to be pretty tough to do because all these radios are good in their own right. They've all got some pretty compelling reasons to buy them. But I do kind of want to give people a feel for what's out there and what they might want to consider when they buy their first radio. Now, I did a field radio video. I've done several of them. I did a basic field radio video, and then I did a field radio video with my Activators Guide series. This is actually going to be putting two radios up against each other to see if we can come up with a winner between those two particular radios. And we'll go through all of my radios until we crown a winner. Now, that's probably going to be easier said than done, but we'll see how it goes. Now, today, we are going to start with a couple of CW-only radios. Now, I have a number of CW-only radios, and I can tell you right up front, a CW-only radio is not going to win this shootout. They're too limited. Even for a CW op, sometimes it's nice to have the ability to work single sideband or digital if you want to, or even just listen to single sideband sometimes, all right? So chances of a CW-only radio winning this thing are slim to none. But I want to start there because that's also where you're going to find some of your least expensive field radios. And if you're a CW-only operator and you're looking at buying CW-only radios, this could be helpful. So with that being said, we're going to compare two similar radios today. Now, I hemmed and hawed as to which two radios I wanted to start with. I knew I was going to pick one of these two to start with. The other one was kind of up in the air between two different radios, but I ended up my first radio we're going to talk about today, and this sheet should look familiar. This is the sheet I used when I did my Activators Guide series. But the first radio we're going to look at today is the Venustech SW-3B. That radio was always going to be the one I was going to start with. Why? It's $188. I mean, it's hard to argue with a $188 radio. They come from China. They usually take a few weeks to get. If you order one, I think mine took, I don't know, in the neighborhood of 2 weeks. Something like that to get. I don't remember what the shipping was, but it wasn't terribly expensive. $15, something like that. It's 4.09 inches by 2.79 inches by 1 inch. It weighs 6.43 ounces. The power output is right around 5 watts. It's a 3-band radio. It does 40, 30, and 20, and it is CW only. Okay? Now, the other radio we're going to look at today, we're going to have it go up against, is the LNR Precision MTR-4B. Now, I almost pulled the 3B for this comparison because they both run the same bands, but I wanted to do I decided on the 4B because this radio is currently available, and I wanted to start with two radios you could go buy today if you wanted to. By buy today, I mean you could theoretically order one of these today. You're not going to get it today, and I say theoretically because today is December 2nd. By the time you're watching this, it'll be sometime probably in January. And these radios go on sale the first of the month every month. So on the first of the month, so yesterday, December 1st, LNR put 25 units up for sale. It doesn't mean they have 25 units ready to go. It means you're on the list to get one of the 25 radios they make that month. So there may be, I'll bet you if I went to the LNR Precision website right now, there may be a couple left for the month of December. Sometimes they're all gone on the first day. Sometimes it takes a day or two, okay? But if you're looking at buying one of these, you've got to be in there on the first of the month. It's about a 4 to 6 week wait. I think I waited about 5 weeks for my radio. They're $369, I think, $370 in that general vicinity, all right? But you could buy one theoretically right now and you'd have it in a month or so. The size is 5.15 inches by 3 inches by 1.075 inches. Weight is 7.95 ounces. Power output, again, is about 5 watts. This is a 4-band radio. It's 80, 40, 30, and 20. How useful is 80 in the field? I don't know. That's dubious, right? I mean, an 80-meter antenna is huge. So I don't know about 80 meters in the field, but this radio includes it. And again, it is CW only. All right, so those are the two radios we're going to take a look at today. So There's our SW-3B. And there's our MTR-4B. So you'll see I've got these packaged up similarly. Both of these radios have the power cables with them. I've got everything cinched together with a Velcro strap. Both radios have the user manual with them. Both of them have a 3D printed cover. All right, that I can just pick these radios up, toss them in a pack, and I'm ready to go. It's all right there. I've got the power cable, the manual, the cover for the radio, the radio. Usually what I'll do is I'll throw this in a kit with everything else, and then it's ready to go. Okay, you can package things up however you want. I like things in a nice, neat package where I can just pick them up and roll. So let's start with the SW-3B. So let me go ahead and unpackage this. Tip this camera down just a little bit. Now, hopefully this camera doesn't quit on me. This thing's been shutting off a lot of me lately, so if we get a little bit of jankiness in this video, it's because the camera shut off and I had to turn it back on. I'll warn you if that happens. But like I said, I like to keep a copy of the manual with my radios, at least if they're reasonable size. These are only a couple pages each. Neither one of these radios is very complicated to use, but if you don't use them all the time, which is the case with me, I use these radios once a month, maybe because I've got so many different radios. It's nice to have the manual with you in case you don't remember how to do something, right? So here's the power cable for the SW-3B. It is a barrel jack. I forget what size this is, but it's a fairly standard size barrel jack. This is the plug that came with the radio when I bought it. You'll see it does contain a ferrite, which is kind of nice. It's a decent length. I cut this short. This came like 3 feet long. I don't need that much wire on a field radio. In fact, this is probably still too long. This is probably 18 inches. It's still too long. And I threw some power poles on the end, right? So you'll see I've got a 3D printed cover and 3D printed side rails on this radio. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But let me go ahead and pop this cover off. Let's take a look at the radio itself. So, like I said, this is a 3-band radio. This is 40-30-20. This radio has some features that make it pretty nice as a little field rig. This radio has got an actual VFO. A lot of these radios do not have encoder style VFOs. Now that's a blessing and a curse, which you'll see in a little bit. Having that knob is a good thing and a bad thing. You'll also notice this has got separate RF and AF gains. Same deal. A lot of these radios are not going to have adjustable gains. This one does. And it's really nice because I can change the gains for my receive and my side tone and all that stuff. I can do that just by turning knobs. You're going to see on the mountain topper, that is not doable, okay? So that's one thing right out of the gate that makes this radio really nice is especially, if you're somebody, for instance, if you don't hear as well as you used to, being able to crank these gains up and down is a big help, all right? Being able to adjust your side tone. Sometimes some people will complain the side tone's too loud on their mountain toppers, things like that. I can adjust that on this radio, which you can't do on those. So you see we've got an on and off switch. We've got a CQ memory. This has a single CQ memory. You push that button and it calls CQ, and that's all it does. It calls CQ, your call. It's not editable other than you can put your call sign in there. It does have RIT. It's got both memories and VFOs. There are a few other options in here. You long press the CQ button to change your key speed, things like that. The key speed you actually change with the key. If I remember correctly, that's how I know you do it with the key. I think you long press that CQ button, but it's in the manual. Like I said, that's why I keep the manual with the radio. But let me go ahead and hook this radio up so you can see what the screen looks like and hear what the side tone sounds like. Now, I'm not going to hook this up to an antenna right now, so you're not going to hear any receive audio. I'll tell you, both of these radios have good receive audio. This one has better receive audio. I'll tell you that right out of the gate. The receive audio on this SW-3B is better than the mountain topper. So let me throw a key on. And we'll hook up an external speaker. Neither one of these radios has an internal speaker. Of course, I've got that cable wrapped around 50 other cables. Sorry, I just bumped the camera. Go ahead and plug that in. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hook a dummy load up to this guy. Again, I'm not going to hook this up to an antenna. Okay, so we'll go ahead and turn this thing on. All right, you may get a little bit of screen flickering. Hopefully, it looks bad on my screen. I don't think when you see it in the video, it'll be too bad. Let me tip this camera up a little bit. I'll hold the radio So if you look, you'll see that right now it's on memory 04. One of the things I don't like about this radio is when you turn it on, it defaults to memories. I don't know why, but it does. You just push the memory and VFO button to switch to VFO. Okay, so now we're on VFO. You'll see here's our battery voltage, 11.9 volts. You're going to see that this radio and the Mountain Topper disagree on how much voltage there is in this battery. Not a big deal, but that's just something to consider. Obviously, we've got our frequency. We've got an S meter, and it tells us what band we're currently on. I don't really know if I need to know what band I'm on if I'm on 7.023, right? I should probably be able to figure that one out. But I can simply turn my VFO to change my frequency. You'll see there's a little caret icon above that 9. All right, if I push the VFO, you'll see that that caret moves. All right, so I can change where I'm tuning. Okay, so tuning on this radio is very easy. Rotary encoder, you just click the encoder, click the knob to move the caret to whatever you want to change. All right, and this radio will receive single sideband. All right, it won't transmit on it, but it will receive it. So, again, like I said, adjustable gains. So, let me go ahead and key this thing up. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but I can change my side tone just by turning my AF gain knob. All right, that's something you're not going to see I can't do on the Mountain Topper. This does have, you'll see the S meter turns into a power meter when I hit the key. All right. So I do have a power meter and an S meter. Now it's not a numerical power meter, it's just a bar graph. Okay, but it at least tells me what kind of power output I have. And I can sort of infer SWR based on power output, right? If I'm getting full power output, I know I've got low SWR. If I key this up and it's my power meter's barely moving, I know my SWR is high. But there is no external, there's no external display for SWR on this radio. You either need an antenna tuner or you need to know your antenna is resonant, or you need to, check with like a nano VNA or something if you want an actual SWR reading. But generally speaking, I run resonant antennas anyway. So I know when I key this thing up, if I see I'm getting full power out, I know my SWR is reasonable. To change bands, you simply move these switches. So there's 40, there's 30, there's 20. You'll see when I move one switch, it moves the other switch as well. I like to move both of them at the same time, just not to put extra strain on them. All right, and the side tone is nice on this radio. It's not super robotic. There are some radios out there that have some pretty gnarly side tones. This one actually sounds pretty good. All right. All in all, this is a great little radio, especially for what it costs. Okay, so a couple of things about this radio that you do need to watch. One, it does have an actual VFO and actual adjustable AF and RF gains. That's both good and bad. It's good because it makes it real easy to adjust, but in the field, that can be a bad thing because when I throw this in a pack, these are fairly inexpensive encoders. I mean, this is a sub $200 radio. These are not going to be expensive encoders. The failure point of this radio is probably going to be these encoders. So if you're beating and banging this thing around in your pack, that's probably your failure point. So that is going to be the weak link here, okay? It's a blessing and a curse. That is why I 3D printed the rails and the cover for this radio so that when I throw this thing in my pack or throw it in a case, it's not beating these knobs up, right? I can set this thing down like this and it's not laying on the knobs, okay? This does not come with little rubber feet on the bottom. I put those on myself. Just keep that in mind. It's just smooth metal on the bottom normally. All in all, though, this is a fantastic little radio. It's inexpensive. The audio is fantastic. It's a very simple radio to operate. It's nice because it's got a very easily adjustable VFO. It's got separately adjustable AF and RF gains. It does have CQ memories, but it's only got one, so that's a little bit limiting. But all in all, for a CW-only field radio, this is a cool little radio. The price is right. It's very simple to use, especially if you're a newer operator. All right, so if you're trying to get rid of the glare here. If you are a newer CW op, this is a really good radio for you. It's very easy to use. Like I said, the audio is very, very good. It is, it really is a great little radio. Okay, so that's the SW-3B. Now let's take a look at the MTR-4B. So we'll do the same thing. We'll grab that radio, we'll bring it over. So you'll see I've got it packaged up the same way. Let me remove the power cable for the SW-3B here. All right, so again, our power cable. Again, it's a pretty standard barrel jack. This is a different size. And again, all these barrel jacks are available all over the place. You can buy them on Amazon or wherever. I forget what size they are. I'd have to look it up. But this is the power cable that comes with the radio. Again, I put power poles on it. All right. Again, I have the manual. This one's a little bigger than the SW-3B manual, but this radio has more features. Now, this 3D printed cover I made for this one doesn't fit quite as nice as the one on the SW-3B, because the one on the SW-3B's got those side rails it fits into. This has got 2 tabs that fit over the radio. If we can get it off of there. There it goes. We'll take that guy off. So here's our MTR-4B. Now, I want to get this out of the way right now. The finish on this radio, the actual finish of it, is trash. Now, I own 2 mountain toppers, and the other one is fantastic. This one, the current iteration of the MTR-4B, the finish is not very good. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's all scuffed up. Right? You can see the scuffs around the buttons and right there. And if I flip this radio up, you'll see the finish is actually flaking off the top of this radio. Now, it started chipping off when I was fitting the 3D printed cover. This cover fits super tight, and I had to remove, I don't know if you can see it, but I had to remove material from down in the corners here, and remove material from along in here to get it to fit correctly. And just the act of fitting a piece of plastic to this radio chipped that paint off, okay? These are supposed to be powder coated. That looks like paint to me. It doesn't look like powder coated. The other one is absolutely powder coated. It's obvious that it's powder coated. I don't think the finish prep was done very well on this. I don't know if you can see it or not. It's probably not going to focus, but that just looks like bare aluminum. It doesn't look like it was ever sanded or anything. Whatever. I mean, it's just paint. I'm not going to worry about a couple little chips in the paint. But if you're anal about that stuff, that might drive you crazy on this radio. So I'm just going to warn you right up front that the actual finish of this radio is subpar. Okay. However, this radio has some features that I think are pretty awesome. There are some things about this radio that drives me nuts too. We'll talk about those in a minute, but again, this is a 4-band radio. So this is going to do 80, 40, 30, and 20. Again, 80 is fairly useless in the field from my perspective. That's kind of one of those things where, you know, how much are you going to use 80 in the field? I mean, an 80 meter end fed half wave or an 80 meter dipole is going to be like 132, 133 feet long. Where are you going to put that thing up? Especially if you're doing like a summit. I mean, around here I probably could because there's trees, but if you're out west, you're not putting a dipole up, 80 meter dipole up, right? Maybe you could do a vertical with a big coil, but you know, I mean, whatever. That's neither here nor there. That's a fairly useless band as far as I'm concerned on a field radio, but that's just me. So we've got a very simple user interface. We have 4 buttons at the bottom, a function button, a RIT button, and then our VFO up and down button. Those also have some other sub functions we'll talk about in a minute. And then to change bands, you move these 3 sliders. You have to move these ones independently. They do not follow each other. So you'll see if I move the band button, the band one, the other 2 don't move. These need to be lined up when you operate this radio. They move together on the SW-3B. They don't move together on this radio. So that's something you do need to watch. So let me go ahead and hook this radio up. Now, one of the things about this radio, this comes with a 90-degree power cable, okay? I like the 90-degree jacks for most things because it doesn't put as much strain on things when it gets pulled on. However, all of the connections on these mountain toppers are on the top. All right, who thought that was a good idea? All right, you just got to make sure that this power is coming out of this side when you hook this thing up. It'll block your headphone and your key port if you have your power source on the other side. So that's just something to consider. So let me go ahead and hook this radio up to the battery. I'm just running a little talent cell today just to power these things up. One thing I will mention, this radio will handle between 8 and 15 volts. This radio will not take that much voltage. Okay, you could probably run like a 13.8 volt BioNR or something on this if your antenna was perfect. If your SWR is like 1-to-1, you'd probably be okay. The guts of this thing are not that stout, so you got to be careful. You get a little bit of high SWR and you're running a bunch of voltage, you're probably going to cook this thing. So I don't like to run this radio over 12 volts generally. All right, so I've got a 12 volt talent cell hooked up. That SW-3B, I run that thing on a 3 amp hour BioNO all day, every day, and it's no issue. So that's something to consider as well. These are a little finicky when it comes to battery power. This is better than my other mountain topper, but it's still not quite as, it doesn't have quite as wide a range of voltage as the other radio does. So let me go and hook everything up here. Throw our dummy load back on. Hook our, yep, that's my speaker. Hook our key up. Go ahead and turn this radio on. All right, now I don't know if you heard that or not. Let me turn the radio off. Turn the volume up here. Listen. Hear how it sent 4 when I turned it on? That tells me I'm on 40 meters. If I put this radio on, let's put it on 20 meters. It sends a 2. It tells me it's on 20 meters. So this has an audible alert to tell you what band you're on. Now, I don't know if you can hear that or not. All right, but this radio is very affected by radio frequency interference, way more so than the SW-3B. All right, you can probably hear that just sitting here. My cell phone wreaks havoc with this radio. This radio is the worst radio I have as far as external RFI around, like I said, like your cell phone. This thing, if I put my cell phone next to this thing and have it do anything, you'll hear it in the speaker real bad. That's the one thing about, one of the few things about this radio that make me insane is it doesn't handle that kind of stuff real well. All right, so just know that if you're going to use this radio, put your cell phone in airplane mode or get it away from the radio. Like I said, I'm getting interference from the light, and you can hear it in the speaker. Okay, you didn't hear that on the SW-3B, so that's something to consider. Now, when we look at the feature set of this radio, so we have a function button, which does various functions, a RIT button, which obviously does RIT, and we have a VFO up and down button. So on the screen, it's a very simple LCD screen. It gives us our frequency. It tells us our key speed, the time, and the battery voltage. Now, a couple things about this radio right off the bat that I like. It gives me time. It's got a real-time clock. So when you are logging, I don't need to look at my phone. I don't need to look at my watch. The time is right on the radio. That is something I really like to have in a field radio if I'm going to use it for field activations. If I'm not doing activations and I'm not worried about speed, like if I'm not running pile-ups and trying to figure out time, not a big deal. But if I'm doing a POTA or soda activation and I got to pile up, I don't want to have to keep looking at my phone or a watch. I just want to look on my screen and, okay, it's 1959 right now. All right. And I've got this set to UTC. All right. So it is currently 3 p.m. here in New York. So it's 20 hours UTC because we're currently -5 because it's standard time. So that right there, that feature right there is killer, right? If you've got a field radio with an internal clock, if you're an experienced field activator, you know how useful that is. Now let's talk about a couple other things about this radio that make it stand out from the other radio. If I press this function button, I can adjust my key speed, so I can move my key speed up and down very easily. The other radio, I didn't show it to you, but I have to go into key speed and then use the paddles, the dit and da paddles to change my key speed. This one, I just hit key speed and I can change it in real time, okay? The other thing I can do is I can, notice I hit function and then RIT and it put me in straight key mode. All right, so let me get out of here again. Function, RIT. So now we're currently, you'll see key speed 22, function, RIT. Now it says straight key. Okay, that's how you change from straight key and paddles. Now, why that's important is this, all right? When I'm in paddle mode, it shows me my key speed. All right. However, when I go into straight key mode, now watch what it does when I key this thing up. It gives me SWR on the left and power output on the right. So you can see I've got an SWR of 1:1 and a power output of 6 watts. Okay, so this radio gives me real SWR and actual power output. The other radio doesn't. Now you have to put the radio in straight key mode to do that, but if you want to check your antenna before you start sending, all you do is you put the thing in straight key mode and hit the key. I'm 1:1 and I'm putting out 6 watts. We're ready to roll. That feature alone makes this radio awesome as a field radio because I know conclusively that my SWR is good, all right? And I know how much power I'm putting out. I think that's a pretty important feature in a field radio. A lot of field radios are lacking that, all right? I think that's important. So this radio is very easy to do that. Now let's talk about changing the VFO on this radio because at a glance, it's obnoxious. I've got these up and down arrows. So I push those buttons and you can see the VFO change. And it goes real slow. If I can press it and it goes in increments of 50. If I hold it, it moves. I forget if it's function or RIT. I think it's function. I don't remember. You hold it down, that down, and this down, and it'll move faster. I don't want to change. That's way harder than a knob, right? I don't want to have to sit here and hold this thing all day to change frequencies. Look at how long that takes. 62, 61, 60. I don't want to do that. What this radio has it's such an awesome feature. And this is, when I first saw this in the manual, I was like, oh, this sounds so gimmicky. And then I used it and I'm like, oh, this is incredible. All right. If I long press this function button, if you listen, the first thing it's going to do is give me a K for key speed. Then it's going to give me a D. Watch the screen. Here, D did it, da did it for D. Now notice it gives me lines and it says exit, RE, and LD. This is direct frequency entry mode. So let's suppose I want to go to 14.026. Now let's do 025 because that's super fast and easy to key. So I'm gonna key 0. Oh, notice it said da-da-da-da, did it? Because I let go of the key too fast and it said question mark. So 0, 5, 5. So now I put 055 in there. I was going to do 25, but I just put 055 in there, hit load. It takes us to 14.055. Now let's go to 14.025. So we're going to go long press until you hear D. So we'll go 025. Load. We're on 14.025. If on this radio, if I want to change frequency and I want to move a lot, I don't want to move 1 or 2K, but I want to move way up or down the band, it is much faster to do on this radio than it is on the other radio, even though the other radio has an actual VFO. Because this radio, you just key the frequency in and hit load and it goes. So if you know CW, and you know, I'm hoping you do because you're using a CW only radio, you key that frequency in, you hit load, boom, it takes you right to it. That direct frequency entry function on this radio is awesome. Like I said, when I first saw it in the manual, I'm like, oh, that's so gimmicky. And then I tried it and I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. I wish every radio had that. It is so fast. All right. This radio also has multiple CW memories and they are programmable. Unlike the 3B that's got a single CQ and it's not programmable, this one, so you'll notice that I've got KM under RIT. That keys my memory, and that's memory 1, memory 2, memory 3. So if I hit KM and then hit memory 1, that's my POTA CQ. If I hit key memory 2, all right, I have that one set for SOTA. Okay, I don't have anything in the third one, but you could put, you know, your whatever your ending thing is, thank you and 73 from K2EJTK, whatever, dit, whatever. You can put whatever you want in there. Point being, this has got editable, programmable CQs, and it has 3 of them. Okay, so I've got 3 different memories that I can send, and they're not just CQs. Like I said, you could send any part of the QSO you wanted with the memory. That is a feature in a field activation radio I think is crucially important. And that's a knock against the SW-3B is I can't program that CQ in there. Okay. So let's go ahead and bring this camera back up. Let's turn this radio off. Let's unhook everything. And then let's do some final thoughts here and see if we can come up with a winner. And I'm going to be honest with you, that is harder than you might think with these two radios because they are both exceptionally good radios. They have different strengths and different weaknesses. So let's talk a little bit about strengths versus weaknesses. SW-3B strength, it's dirt cheap. This thing is $188. I mean, it's $188, right? It is 3 bands. It's got a real VFO. It's got a real AF gain. It's got a real RF gain. This radio does not have adjustable RF and AF gains. I can't adjust the side tone easily or the volume easily. On the bottom of this radio is a little tiny hole where you use a non-conductive screwdriver to adjust your side tone. Come on, really? Like, can't I just turn the knob? Now, we'll talk in a minute about the lack of knobs on this and that being a good thing. You'll see what I mean in a minute, okay? But I can't adjust side tone. I can't adjust volume easily on this radio. This radio, it's you turn knobs. Done. Adjust the VFO, turn knobs. Very easy to read in sunlight. It's very light. The case is very well built. It's very inexpensive. It's easier to get than this radio is. If you want one of these, you can have one of these. If you want one of these, you got to be there on the first to be one of the first 25 people to buy one or find one used, okay? Downsides of this radio, and a couple other upsides that I forgot. Awesome audio. Better audio on this radio than this radio. It's not as affected by RFI. I think the receive sounds better. I think the side tone is easier on your ears because it's adjustable. This one has a nicer sounding side tone, but this one I can turn the side tone down, which I kind of like to do. Okay, so downsides though, you get your weak encoders here, which are going to be your failure points. This radio does not have programmable CQs. It doesn't have a power meter, a real one. I mean, it's got a bar meter. It doesn't have a SWR meter. It doesn't have an internal clock. Okay, those are all things that in a field radio for me, I really like to have. Now, this does have a much wider voltage range than this radio does, but I can deal with, a lower voltage battery, not a big deal. Okay, so this radio's got some advantages and it's got some disadvantages. Now, let's take a look at the Mountain Topper. So advantages, 4-band radio. How useful that is, I don't know. It depends on if you use 80 to field or not. This radio has a real-time clock. It's got an SWR meter. It's got 3 different programmable CQs or message memories that don't even have to be CQs. I can direct frequency enter my frequencies. It's very easy to change key speed on this radio. It's very easy to switch between keyer and straight key on this. It's a little finicky on this radio. This radio does come with a little sticker on the bottom that gives me all my shortcuts. So if I can't remember how to do something, you look on the bottom of the radio. Now, if you're an old guy like me, it's going to be hard to read. I mean, I can read it, but they're a little small. Okay, you got young eyes, you'll probably be okay. This radio, all in all, has a lot of feature set that is designed. You can tell that, and I know one of the guys from LNR, so I know how they operate, and you can tell this was designed by someone who clearly designs field radios. Okay, there are a couple companies where it's obvious those guys use their radios. LNR being one of them. The other one that comes to mind immediately is Elecraft. But like I said, there's some awesome feature sets on this. It doesn't have encoders. Now that seems like a pain in the butt, right? It's so easy to turn these knobs. However, they're a weak point. On this radio, I got some slider switches and a couple little buttons. These little raised rails right here protect it, so if I lay it down, none of those things touch the desk, okay? Downsides, voltage requirements, much more finicky. The receive audio I don't think is quite as good. It is very affected by RFI and things like that. The finish quality is, this radio, the finish quality is better on that radio than it is on this. Now, I will say on my other Mountain Topper, the finish on that is better than both of these radios. Other downsides on this radio, minor gripes, things like, the fact that all the connections are on top and that can get blocked by the power cable, things like that. Other than that, I mean, this radio is pretty solid, okay? Now, which one's better? That's a really, really difficult question to answer, and it's going to depend on the operator. If you are a brand new CW operator, buy an SW-3B. All right, if this is your first CW radio and you're just looking to get into it and you don't want to spend a ton of money and you want a solid radio, buy one of these. Now, you could buy a QMX too, but they're really hard to get and they don't have adjustable. The AGC doesn't work correct. correctly, and there's some weird things. I think once that radio is ironed out, that thing is going to be absolutely killer. Right now, for me, I'm going to buy one of these just because it's a finished product. However, if you're a more experienced CW operator, especially if you're going to be doing field activations like I do, I think this is a better radio. It's a more finished radio. You know, you've got your clock, you've got an SWR meter, you've got a power meter, you've got multiple programmable CW memories, right? There are things about this radio, it's obviously more rugged because it doesn't have the encoders. There are things about this radio that just make it a better field radio for me, I think. And at the end of the day, I think for most experienced operators, this is going to be a better radio. All right, so if I had to only pick one of these, if you said you can only keep one of these radios, it would probably be the Mountain Topper. Not to say the SW-3B is a bad radio, it's phenomenal. And this radio costs half as much as this radio does. And it's way more than half the radio. This is 90% of the radio this is for half the price. All right, but if I only had to pick one, if you had to say pick one of these two radios, you got to get rid of the other one, I would definitely keep the MTR-4B. It just suits my operating style better. All right. So like I said, the idea here is I'm going to kind of go through all of my different radios. Now, keep in mind, I don't own every field radio, right? I can only speak about what I have. But I'm going to go through all my different radios, and we're going to do this same thing. Strengths and weaknesses, try to pick a winner. So this week, my MTR-4B one, which means as much as I love this SW-3B, that one is going to be retired from this. So the next video will be that Mountain Topper against my next victim. All right. So stick around for the series. Check out all the different radios. The idea here, like I said, I want to give people an idea of what these things are really about. So when you go spend money on a radio, you're getting something that actually works for how you want it to work. If you don't care about doing activations or, you know, working pileups, like this radio is better for working pileups than that one is because it's got, you know, the memories and stuff. So like I can be hitting a memory for thank you in 7.3 while I'm logging information, things like that, right? The filtering's a little better on this radio. It's not adjustable, but the filtering is a little better on this radio. But you know, I just want to give people kind of a feel for what these radios are about. So when you spend money on it, you know what you're getting. Okay, so I really appreciate you watching today. Hopefully you're not too bored. Hopefully you found it informative. And like I said, awesome radio, but at the end of the day, this guy's going to win the shootout for today. So with that being said, I really appreciate you watching. I appreciate all the support. And until the next one, thank you so much. 7-3.